It's 1936, and since the end of the First World War, Germany has become the center of the world, starting the Pax Germanica. Every capitalist economy is directly linked to Germany's, and those who aren't, they're probably poor as fuck. With the German Empire spanning the world, and with its largest military on the planet, no one can even touch the pristine power of the German superpower. This massive empire is being ruled by the invincible Kaiser Wilhelm II, who has become a renowned figure of German invincibility. However, Germany's old enemies were still alive in Africa, as well as in Canada, having been thrown out of their own countries after the First World War, with new syndicalist governments taking their place, as syndicalism has risen across Western Europe, with even the Russians growing in strength after their colossal loss in the First World War. And with every old and new enemy strengthening themselves against us, it leads to the first time that Germany has faced any significant strength in almost 20 years. Another election year comes around in Germany, as the SPD gears up for a hard fight in the Reichstag, as nationalist factions have risen in the last couple of years. Yet this problem isn't what's on the mind of the average German, as everybody worries about the recent stagnation of the stock market, especially when news about corruption and fudging of numbers have come out of Asian business branches in China and in German Indochina, which means that instead of reporting on the declining economic prosperity of these branches, it was just easier to write a couple extra zeros on the sheets and hope no one notices. Spoiler, they fucking noticed. This leads to mass panic and a run on the banks. The banks, however, quickly get shut down by Walter von Rathenau to stop the run on the banks, hoping that things will look a lot better on Monday. However, things are in fact not looking better. The situation continuously worsens, increasing the Black Monday debuff more and more. The Chancellor, who's supposed to fix everything, yeets out of the window and runs away.
Where's Leon when I need him?
The problem now is that we need someone who will actually fix everything. The two parties that have established themselves as the most prominent are the Social Democratic Party, the SPD, and the DVLP, who is increasingly seen with disdain by both centrist and Kaiser Wilhelm II. I decided to put my faith in the SPD. A moderate party is what we need to keep Germany together in these times. During this entire debacle, the puppet master Schleicher has been scheming in the shadows, deciding this is his time to shine, as he starts using his immense influence as well as his great friendship with the Kaiser to covertly change things in the shadows, as he's not yet prepared to step into the light. With the economy falling harder than any chance that a Hoi4 player will ever get a girlfriend, our German investments are under threat, as in China, socialist and far-right forces have risen up to undermine everything we built over the past 20 years in China. So I sent out a detachment of volunteers and guns to help our Chinese allies in the League of 8 provinces. Political maneuvering starts happening in Germany, as every party wants to use the recent collapse in the economy to gain power, as both sides need enough seats to create a stable government. While this is happening, the economic downfall finally ceases, as we begin the greatest game of Magic the Gathering in history.
Oh, we're playing Magic the Gathering, it's happening!
As Germany gains a bunch of new decisions, which is the card game. We need to use these cards that the game gives us to reach the point goals that the game sets for us. And to reach these goals, the cards also gives a little bit of depth. If we reach 200% depth, we lose. And we need to win this game 10 times, as every time we win, the Black Monday debuff gets lessened and lessened, which means we better fucking win. As the votes finally come in, it seems like no one ever actually got enough seats in parliament, neither the SPD or the DVLP, so Kaiser Wilhelm gets to choose, and he chooses his staunch ally in government, Kurt von Schleicher, also known as the Red General, who is the Minister of War, who suspiciously has gotten more and more involved in politics, and with his great friendship with the Crown Prince Wilhelm III as well, he was appointed Reichschancellor, exactly what Schleicher wanted all along. With the war in the League of 8 provinces turning against the League's enemies, as Major and Turkmens crush left and right wing divisions, as my men and my Lend-Lease guns find much success. While the economy was finally gaining a little bit of momentum, the Rush strike happens, crippling our most prosperous and industrialized part of Germany, hitting us with this debuff.
People ask how I'm doing. Very suicidal.
It's rape time, baby.
While we are already struggling, the reasoning for making Germany, well, more shit because of the strike, the fact that, well, Germany is so shit. And apparently they also hate Schleicher because he is trying to fix the country and not turn Germany into their syndicalist paradise. Essentially, fuck the syndicalists. However, while others see the Ruhrkampf as, well, bad or something that could really hurt the government and the country, Schleicher sees it as an opportunity to gain power, as Schleicher chooses to go to the strikes personally. And this turns out to be an absolutely smash hit, as everybody just loves the guy apparently, as he uses his level 100 speed stat to basically make everybody love the guy. This coinciding with the fall of the League's enemies, hope in Germany is finally being restored. While Germany is still being ripped apart, problems in the Balkans have risen. Bulgaria, our old ally, is facing a major threat from their neighbors. Seeing this, we in Austria decided to help them in the upcoming war, seeing Bulgaria as the only power that can potentially hold the peace in the Balkans. As the Ruhrkampf protest had now spread all across the empire, no one in government was prepared for what to come. The majority of politicians had lost faith in a democratic government, as it seemed like the government government could not even handle small protests. Schleicher had from the start supported the protests to make the government seem more and more unstable, and this had now finally worked, as he had now gained complete and utter dominance over German politics, to the point where nothing happened without his approval. He had crushed what little democracy existed and dawned the era of the Red General. The Red General's first move was to put troops in Bulgaria and send them tons of guns, as a strong Bulgarian ally would be vital to secure German influence and peace in the Balkans. The Bulgarians, however, were very incompetent at war and had gotten divisions encircled in the first few weeks, turning the war into a losing one. Those weapon shipments would be turned around. The men, however, might as well gain some army XP. With the economy getting better, the Magic the Gathering tournaments being beaten every single time, the Black Monday debuff was getting smaller and smaller, meaning we could actually use the immense amount of civs Germany has, forcing all the lazy workers back into the factories to make something actually useful for our people: guns. The Bulgarian campaign had evolved into a slog, as Bulgaria was so weak they could barely even hold the front, and with my hope in them disappearing like a father seeing his son boot up Genshin Impact, as my attention on that point was put fully into the Spanish Civil War, as I could not let the syndicalists get a foothold in Spain, and making my position even worse than it already is. Friendship ended with Bulgaria, and a new friendship started with Spain, as guns and men would be sent. As my divisions landed in Spain, it was already looking really bleak, as the death stack of syndicalist volunteers had already arrived before me. This didn't stop me from making gains, however, as I made the Spanish monarchists first encirclement. The Spanish Civil War was also turning around, as encirclement started happening on the syndicalist front, and you cannot tell me this doesn't look amazing. All the volunteers in one clump getting completely encircled, as my volunteers and also my equipment was now finally carrying the war. The Bulgarian front as well would also see massive gains, as Greece would start facing massive problems called being encircled, as my German gigachats being increasingly in their backlines, taking their cities. It was then the far-left Democratic Unionists decided that Schleicher had to be dealt with. Democracy was on the line, and Germany had to be saved. They rose up and overthrew the dictator Schleicher and installed a democratic government that would last a million years. No, they really didn't. That little movement had been infiltrated long ago by secret police. Yapping about how bad Schleicher is? Well, I guess you can keep yapping from your prison cell, as the entire movement had been crushed. The few that weren't directly involved became fanatic supporters, willingly. This coinciding with the war camp finally being dealt with, the German Empire was strengthening and healing. The budget of the government also had to go through the Reichstag to be approved, this being a place where the SPD could finally stop Schleicher. Schleicher, however, decided that the Reichstag kinda sucked, so enacted emergency powers without there even being an emergency, approving the budget without the need of the SPD, eliminating another hurdle that could hurt Schleicher in the future. The German states, now panicking as a bald guy now ran things, finally rose up against his authoritarian moves, Bavaria being the key initiator, as German states still largely had a lot to say in the running of the country, as they still held a large amount of autonomy over their own affairs. Bavaria, though, overstepped how much people really hated the bald man, as every state beside one voted against Bavaria, destroying the second last authority that could still hurt Schleicher, as the bald man now was on equal footing with the Kaiser himself. Maybe the Kaiser choosing Schleicher was a bad idea in hindsight. Coinciding with these great news, Bulgaria won the war, with my help of course, as this meant they would be my ally in the future. Right? Great news came in from all over the empire, as Black Monday finally gets removed, as I can sigh a sigh of relief, as the fact I don't have to deal with a card game anymore. Also, the amount of micro you need to do as Germany is fucking horrendous. Manage volunteers in multiple nations, decisions that can be detrimental to a run, and choices that can either make or break your relations to puppets. Whoever made this must be out of their damn mind. The Spanish Civil War was also getting finished, as we finally crush all other Spanish factions, making sure that Spain remains a supporter of Germany. The Dutch, seeing how well I've been doing, decides to join the winning team and joins the alliance. This means we can finally begin taking focuses that help our military prepare for the coming conflicts. Let us hope the text here doesn't mean something important, as this is the first time I play Germany. Let us hope it isn't important at all.
Yeah, we are absolutely cooked.
My attention then went into making mills, civs, and preparing the nation for war, as I was not prepared at all, as Black Monday had crippled my production and construction, and all those nice things like getting army XP and creating better divisions had taken a backseat to making the economy better. However, people had now been calling Schleicher to make his own party. Schleicher, thinking it was a dumb idea, decided to say fuck it and make one, so all his allies could unite behind a party instead of just being a bunch of people slobbing on his old man dick. Because if people wanted him to make a party that bad, he might as well make sure it wasn't dumb, as he did need a lot of political power to create a new constitution, the new rumored Schleicher constitution, which had everyone speculating what it could be. This was worrying the Kaiser, as he thought that his power might be threatened by this. Schleicher told the Kaiser that the monarchy was in completely good hands, secretly telling others that the monarchy would not remain as strong as it is for long. Schleicher had reformed the country in many ways. Much had still to come, however, as he still wanted to shift the economy as well as political landscape of Germany. But as a messenger ran into the office, he was told about Russian and French movements on the border. This meant plans had to be set in motion. was an agreement between Germany and Vasily Boldarev, a Russian democratic freedom fighter. With most of Germany's cabinet still unsure if what was ever gonna happen, we agreed to send him off to Russian Far East to plot a coup in Russia. Because if Russia did decide to attack us, we would have a man on the inside, and if Russia didn't attack us, we could just deny any responsibility. Disappearances had also started happening in Germany, as people critical of Schleicher suddenly disappeared, and all that was left of them was a note that said they had moved to Brazil.
Let me go.
Take him to Brazil.
As the government started looking into how well prepared our army was, it became very clear that the German army was in complete shambles, lacking discipline, equipment, morale. Any war that would happen at this point in time would be really bad, as the army still needed about half a year to be ready for any coming war. It was then really bad, as by mistake, some of our recruits had fired shells against the French. They demanded compensation, and we had to give it to them. Thinking we had avoided war, the Russians apparently decided that we needed to die, as the dreaded war sign appeared at the top. I was not prepared at all, but with the Eastern puppets, it couldn't really be that bad, as the AI in Kaiserreich actually makes like half-decent divisions. The war was then declared, as the Russians pushed 1 million troops against my lines. The Azerbaijanis decided to ask for an alliance, which I took. I can always use a sacrificial pawn to take away the Russians' attention, as the Russian army was massive, as my military was very crippled, as I could only do so much with it, as I was not able to hold green air across the front. So assembling all I have in Ukraine would be my best bet, as it was a massive air zone. Also making sure that my strongest ally in the east would not fall quickly. The French, however, undeterred by my new Great War flag, declared war on me, bringing their little alliance against me, considering I also have the debuff lacking preparedness, giving us a -21 defense debuff, making us get pushed more and more. And with my air force barely existing, meaning we are under red and yellow air all over the western front, putting us on the complete defensive. Belgium falls back to Antwerp, and the seriousness of the situation starts to set in. Thinking the Austrian Empire would be a help to me was also a mistake, as they got pushed out of mountain tiles, meaning I would have to send divisions I could not spare to the Italian front.
Do not be a retard when I'm trying to help you out.
Them also having a small front with Bulgaria, of which is only alive because I saved their ass, joining the Russians, making me feel pretty stupid from wasting all those men and equipment to help them. Small events making the lagging preparedness debuff better was the only hope I had to be able to hold the front, as they capitulated Belgium, making me fall back even further. The exiled French and British decided to come over and have a conference with me, the Halifax Conference. Knowing they were weak as they were still war in the Americas, I decided to make them give up their claims in Ireland, and I needed the Irish as a springboard to invade the British. And they accepted. Had they declined, I would just have backed down, as I had no power to enforce any of these claims. In the conference, I agreed to hand over the UK and French territory if I won. Due to me being absolutely curb-stomped, I needed more distractions to keep the filthy syndicalists away from me. The conference ending, I knew I would have more allies against them. Did that mean, however, that I was now finally gonna win? No. Something I had not expected was the United Baltic Duchies pushing Russia all the way back to Petrograd, making me feel pretty great, as it meant I had one competent ally on the continent. Other than that, the front was pretty relaxed, besides Belarus, where the Russians pushed us back, meaning the actual true enemy was the syndicalists, as they had capitulated Belgium and taken Amsterdam, meaning the western front was in complete collapse, as I could do nothing to stop it. The only thing I could really do was spit out barely trained tank divisions.
Damn! You look confused, boy! You ready to join the army, nigga?
This didn't matter, as the Netherlands capitulated anyway, making the front massive, meaning my debuff divisions had to take over more positions on the front. We had now been pushed back all the way to core German territory, without a shred of help from other countries. The West would fall. Was this the end of the German Empire that was supposed to rule for 1,000 years? Was this the end of Pax Germanica? The ever-popular Kaiser Wilhelm then stood up, knowing that the world was on his shoulder, rallied the German troops, and demanded the German had to go on one final offensive, the Letzte Offensive, the final offensive, to turn back the Frog Eaters and destroy the British monkeys. My 3 tank divisions, inspired by Kaiser Wilhelm's words, smashed into the French lines, gaining the Germans the first encirclement on the western front, encircling over 24 divisions in one fell swoop, probably making the French shit their pants, leading to the French now having lost over 1 million men, smashing further, making gains and encircling divisions they could not pump out faster than I could kill them, destroying another entire army group, turning the tide of the war into our favor, making the entire German government, meaning Schleicher and the Kaiser, very relieved. As the war was finally turning, and the liberation of the Dutch territory was underway, the Kaiser fucking dies, with Wilhelm III taking the throne. Wilhelm III, thinking Schleicher would honor their old agreement of restoring the Kaiser to its old former position of power, was, well, kind of a lie, as even though they were great friends, he really didn't care for the monarchy, so through political meddling, made the Kaiser's role still even weaker, with Wilhelm III none the wiser. What an absolute idiot. Put a bald man in charge and everything just goes their way. The liberation of Amsterdam was the crowning achievement of the German Panzer Corps, as German invincibility was put on full display, especially when the siege of Essen was finally taken and another entire army group was wiped out again, making it the third army group the French would lose. The British did a massive naval invasion, but without the support of air, of which I was slowly winning the air war now, would be a massive mistake, as they lost almost the entire invading army. German invincibility, baby. News also came from South America, as the Argentinians and their allies seek to join the Reichspakt, making tons of South American resources and potential allies off limit to the syndicalists. This also had the added effect of getting even more syndicalist troops off my ass. With the borders now back to what they were before, I was finally dominating the syndicalists in both air and land. My ally Austria has basically been recreating World War I and has had a staring contest with the Italians through the entire war. Germany just can't have good allies, I guess. Any place I wasn't, nothing ever happens. Japan, who has also declared war on me at some point when I didn't know this, offered me peace if I let them take all my lands in Asia. I genuinely wanted to go slap them, but the future gains I could get in territory in the west was worth more, so I let them take my Asian lands. It truly just feels like you're just getting ganked from every side when you're playing Germany. It was now time for revenge, as I was officially back at the border with the frog munchers, as I made encirclement after encirclement, killing every Frenchman that I could see, to make sure if they ever saw a German soldier again, their reaction wouldn't be to fight, but to shit their pants and hide in their little Eiffel Tower. I then LARP by making a pocket in the north, capturing another 24 stack, and moved in and captured Paris. The French were then nothing more than a punching bag, as I kept clapping them over and over again. Also, it's very cute that the Entente landed a naval invasion in the south. I mean, very, very cute. How about they did that 2 years ago when I was about to collapse? But again, I guess just A for effort. Stupid African frog eaters. France that fell as I marched into Italy with barely any resistance, as Italy is and always will be incompetent at war. The French then finally capitulated, but as I had agreed in the Halifax conference, I had agreed to give the territory back to the French Republic. It was then time to go full into Italy, as they capitulated without much of a fight, and now it was just the British left, making my situation godlike. The Russian front, after having not moved for like 2 years, looked better than expected, but would have to be cleaned up. Remember our good friend Vasily Boldyrev, as we were now at the Russian front, as a long time ago we did help him overthrow the Russians, but he had kind of collapsed, but because we were technically allied with him in some sense of the word, we were now finally taking Russian territory and giving it back to him, and making sure that false Russia would be taken over by a more lenient Democrat that looked upon Germany favorably, as it also meant that the more land I took, the more powerful he would become, meaning that less German troops would be needed on the eastern front. I completely and utterly destroyed Russia. Russia having been throwing their men at my puppets since day one, I could just drive through their lines and take massive chunks of land without any penalties. When you finally have good tank divisions and no debuff artificially destroying you, the AI just starts eating bricks. There's no thought going through that brain, I tell ya. As the Russian front was now so easy that I could just start battle planning the Russians, I could start settling more personal scores. That score to settle was between me and Bulgaria, as I had wasted resources, planes, men, equipment that could have been used at the start of this massive war, but no, they just had to go against me. Can you tell I'm pissed? Because I fucking am. My newly created mountaineers, of which I only made to make sure I could destroy the Bulgarians thoroughly, smashed into Albania and ran through their lines, taking Greek lands and then moving on to Sofia, of which I burned to the ground for their treachery against the German Empire. While I was burning Sofia, the Russians came to me with a peace offer. My puppets would get land and they would become democratic. If I didn't, they would also have this massive buff, considering that buff being very, very good for the Russians, but in the hands of an AI, it would not really matter that much. But I decided to take the peace, which meant our good friend Vasily now ruled Russia and made it a de facto ally of the Germans. Having now crushed 3 major countries with my armies, all that was waiting for me was the disgusting, filthy, dirty Brits, who were still hanging on to their island. Having an Irish ally finally paid off, as it gave me an opening to land close to the UK, as I could then build up level 10 airports and bomb every airfield, house and pub to the ground, making the landing pretty damn easy, spreading towards London like a cancer, making them finally cap. Meaning the Second World War was finally finished and making us the winner, returning the British Islands back to Canada, and as well making Ireland regain Northern Ireland, as was a part of the deal. Why the Dominion of India got the territory? I have no fucking clue, but I honored my end of the deal, meaning we had unlocked the last bit of our focus tree. But for some reason, I was also at war with Central America for some reason, but I expected my massive alliance to take care of it, and thus decided the fate of the world. As I began divvying out the territory we gained and creating puppets across the German-owned world, as I was the strongest nation on Earth again, and thus decided the fate of millions of people. Belarus decided to ask for their independence. Considering we were still allies, I agreed, as they had taken the brunt of the Russian assault and then deserved their independence. With the world finally at peace. Somewhat. The election of 1945 happens. Considering Schleicher had won the war and was a key part of garnering the strength to win, he won in a landslide election, like he really needed an election to keep on ruling Germany, but let's just pretend for those democratic normies. He now finally started his goal of making a Schleicher constitution, cementing his own power, making him the most powerful man on earth, as he has centralized all power around himself, and everyone in government thanked him for it. Some men are truly servile by nature.
Are you trying to have sex with me?
Yes.
Even though Schleicher was now the most powerful man on earth, Schleicher really never had any intention to rule Germany forever as some kind of dictator till the end, as he had been throughout the war deadly sick. With Germany saved and the state more powerful than ever, he chose his successor, Ferdinand von Bredow, who was a hardline Schleicherist, meaning the reforms of the empire would stay in place. Yet after proclaiming his successor, the illness took him, making him the greatest German of the 20th century. The man no one liked at the start, the man no one had faith in, the man who was so unpopular that strikes happened around him. But through the war, he had captured every German's heart and was now the most popular German to ever exist, as he had been proclaimed the second Bismarck. He leaves behind a legacy that will shape the future of Germany for centuries to come. His successor Ferdinand's first decree, you ask, making Wilhelm III a de facto puppet Kaiser, like Schleicher always envisioned, putting an end to the meddling from non-elected individuals. Then deciding that non-aligned Scandinavia, who had just been sitting there basically just watching the world just burn to the ground, shouldn't exist, as they could either pick a side or die. Invading through Denmark and then crossing into Scania, and then blasting all the way to Norway, capitulating Scandinavia and creating 3 loyal monarchist states. Then setting my eyes on the Suez Canal, as the Egyptians declined to give it up, landing a naval invasion and then invading through Syria, creating a puppet state of Egypt and Sudan. This was the new German Empire, as the Entente was the last power who could do anything against me. They knew they would never be able to win against the might of the German allied faction. Schleicher's world order had been created. The world was at peace on the Pax Germanica once again. The world was good. The world was German. Wait, before you guys leave, I have created a Discord with a Discord link down in the description where you guys can get updates about my next videos. Because throughout this 5-week video process, you guys had asked me a ton of questions around whenever my next video was gonna drop. And this will be a bit of like a communication way of me communicating whenever our next video is gonna drop. And also you guys can help me make my next videos. Because throughout this video, I had a lot of issues finding music, finding memes and stuff like that for this video, which I'm hoping that you guys very much can help me with this. As it makes the videos come out faster if I have the memes, have the music, and I can get a lot of inspiration from you guys whenever I need help, which is why I've created this Discord. I hope to see you guys in it, and also thank you very much for reaching this point and watching my entire video. It's been a blast getting this much support from the Hoi4 community. Thank you very much, guys.
Mr. Jameson, were those pictures of Spider-Man on the toilet really necessary?
Parker, do you know what frauding is? It's when 2 men stack their dicks on top of each other so the power bottom can jerk them both off simultaneously.